Hey guys, it's Ashley Kirkwood with Speak Your Way to Cash. I have with us today a super influencer, Brian Olds, who is the founder of the Black Speakers Network. And he's going to be talking to us about how he built that platform, his speaking career, and what kind of got him started in this space. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thank you so much, Ashley. I'm glad to be here and
Yep.
super excited to jump into this.
Awesome. Well, we are glad to have you. We are live in the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you should be in the group too. So you can see Brian and myself and ask questions and get all of your questions answered. So, Brian, how do you describe yourself? What do you do? And how did you enter the speaking world? We'll kind of go through your journey.
Yeah, no, it's a great journey, Ashley. So, yeah, well, I started Black Speakers Network in 2016. Black Speakers Network, by the way, we are a nationwide speaker development and empowerment community with a little over 10,000 current aspiring speakers that we get the opportunity to serve on a daily basis. So that started in 2016. Our mission is to equip, connect, and inspire the next generation of Black professional speakers. But to go back in the journey, that would have started 10 years prior to 2016, back in 2006. So Ashley, I think we were talking a little bit. So I'm a proud Morgan State University grad. So we got an HBCU alum in the house. Give us maybe like a hashtag HBCU,
Right.
or put your fist out the window if you're driving, listen to this on the podcast. But obviously, being at Morgan State University was a great experience. But if you had been sitting in a small classroom with me in 2006, you would have watched as I slowly stood up, nervously made my way to the front of the room, and prepared to deliver my very first speech in Toastmasters. And Ashley, you're probably already familiar with Toastmasters, I'm assuming.
Definitely.
Cool. Have you ever been to a meeting?
Oh yeah, I was in several Toastmasters clubs because my job's always paid for it. So I would
Okay.
go and I love speaking. So it was fun. You do the intro speech and kind of work your way up from there.
Exactly. So you're hip to the game. And so for the uninitiated, though, Toastmasters, as Ashley mentioned, it's a national, international organization where you could join and practice being a better public speaker.
Yep.
And so, sharpen your communication skills. So we had just started a club at Morgan State University back in 2006. I was one of the very first speakers at the very first club meeting. And so, Ashley, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the front row of this scene. And if you had been sitting right there, you would have noticed a couple changes in me physically. You would have noticed my sweaty palms as they, if you didn't notice the sweat, you would have noticed the pool forming underneath me because, that's how nervous I was. You would have noticed or heard my shaking voice as it started to crack under the weight of delivering the first few words of my presentation. And if that wasn't bad enough, about halfway through, actually, I don't know who did this. Somebody left the door to the room open, and I was pacing back and forth so much trying to get rid of some of that nervous energy. At one point, I almost walked out of the room. I got a Nigerian friend. His name is Deepo Adesina. He's in the back trying to wave me down like Southwest Airlines, trying to get me back on the right path. And so all this stuff was happening. That was just what was happening on the outside. On the inside, Ashley, I'm sure you heard the term, when you feel nervous about something, you have butterflies flying around
Yep.
in your stomach. Bad case of the butterflies, but mine weren't the Discovery Channel type of butterflies where you see like on TV and Nat Geo. Mine were the Hannibal Lecter style, crashing into each other, trying to escape. And so, long story short, I wrap up my presentation despite all of this, and I noticed that I was still alive. Everybody was clapping, got a round of applause, standing ovation. It made me feel good. Later on, Ashley, I learned in Toastmasters, as you've experienced, we pretty much clap for everything. Like if you bring your lunch to the meeting, you're getting a round of applause. But it's cool. So I was still alive, got a round of applause, but I realized I just survived my first presentation. If I could div one, I could div two, and then two turned into four turned into 10. I eventually, got more comfortable speaking in front of our audience. I went on to speak outside of Toastmasters, and eventually, even after I left Morgan, I'm a little bit of a weird millennial. I spent 11 years working for the same company. but I held a number of different roles. At one point, I got my dream job, which would be a full-time training, um, um, go corporate trainer. So, we drop knowledge on people. So all of these things led me to the point today, but I always share that story and leading up to Black Speakers Network, because in my journey to professional speaking, I had to overcome and get comfortable with public speaking. Just the ability to stand in front of an audience or sit in front of a camera like this and have a conversation was something that wasn't natural to me, and it may not be natural to a lot of folks listening.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, when was your first paid public speech? And did you always know that professional speaking was a career path? So how did you get your first paid engagement?
Yeah, I had no idea people were paying for speakers. In fact, my first paid speaking engagement was like an accident, because I had went back to Morgan and stayed connected with some of the community. And so most universities have a student activities, like an office of student life or something like that. And so I had this presentation that I would deliver over and over again. It was called the 5 C's of crafting powerful presentations. I still deliver it, but at the time I was like, oh yeah, I'll come speak. And then they said, okay, well, we need they was like, we need a W-9. I'm like, what? For what? It's like, well, we can't cut the invoice without it. I'm like, invoice? It's like, yeah, you're getting $500. I was like, that's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly my speaking fee, $500. And so that was my first paid opportunity, Ashley. But what's interesting about that is, one of the reasons I started Black Speakers Network was because there wasn't a lot of, in my perspective, I spent 4 years in business school. I've been, multiple career days and stuff like that. No one had ever talk to me about the prospect of being a professional speaker as a career path. And so there was a whole new world for me, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people. And so to be able to navigate that effectively is one of the reasons that I created the organization. And of course, later on you learn you need speaker contracts and, how to price yourself and raise your fees and, create offers. But that was the very first one. And then from there, it got better. Like I started getting like different contracts. I did speaking engagements for Johns Hopkins University. And I got a training contract with one of the community college to do like their professional development days. So I was getting all types of stuff. And this was without a website, without marketing. People were just hearing about me. And so I was like, okay.
And when you say they were hearing about you, because I think for a lot of people listening, they are, and we talk a lot about systematizing your business at Speak Your Way to Cash. So pitching, doing different things, getting referrals, like working all the avenues. Were these things just coming to you because people know other people and they were like, okay, you should hire this guy. He did a good job.
Well, the thing I came to learn is that speakers, if you're going to be a speaker, you need to speak and not be overly romantic about the audience. And so, in my opinion, the number one marketing tool, because to your right, we get really like romantic about having a great website, marketing tools like electronic press kit, videos, and you need all of those things are helpful. But in my opinion, the number one marketing tool that you have is a killer presentation. And to your point, one of the things that really shifted for me during that period was, when I first started speaking, I would go anywhere to speak about anything, like time management, babysitting, jog, like it didn't matter. Like I would just speak, but when I started slowing down, determining, what type of speaker I'm going to be, who's my core audience and what is my core message, then I got to focus on one presentation. So when I delivered that presentation,
a signature speech, for those of you listening in the Speak Your Way to Cash audience, I always say, get a signature speech.
Got to have a signature presentation, and you're going to have a signature story attached to that presentation. And so these are the elements that I started working on and refining. And you just heard a part of it. That whole part, I didn't just make that up on the spot. If you had been sitting in a small classroom next to me in 2006, you would have watched as I walked nervously to the front of the room and prepared to deliver my very first presentation. Like I've said that literally thousands of times. And so it became part of it. And so I love data. I love seeing what makes people successful. We ask a ton of questions in BSN, just like you do here at Speak Your Way to Cash, Ashley. And I think that's the reason why, we connect so well. And I always ask people like, hey, where'd you find your last speaking opportunity? What are you working on now? And over 75% of speakers in our community find their speaking engagements from where?
Their last engagement.
Absolutely. And it may not be the last immediate one. It may have been something you did 2 years ago. It may have been something you did 6 months ago. Somebody sent that audience. They made note. They didn't say anything to you. They didn't email you. They just said, Ashley, when I have an opportunity, I'm going to bring her name up. And that's how it happens.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. And so when did you start putting systems to your speaking career, and doing or did you ever do outbound marketing and those types of things?
Okay. So yeah, yeah, if I didn't categorize it as that. One of the reasons, so when I created BSN in 2016, it was born out of a frustration of, really just getting access to resources for aspiring professional speakers. And certainly there were, always programs out there, but they just seemed like they weren't as accessible, or they were a little more advanced. And so I was like, let's start from scratch, just like we do in Toastmasters. And so I started the organization with myself as the number one customer. And even to this day, I still charge myself my own membership fee as part of the organization. And so I'm like, man, what do I really need right now? And so part of that process was just getting organized. And so what I started realizing that, if you're going to make the transition from being a public speaker or even, speaking here and there and maybe getting an honorarium or getting a speaking opportunity to being a full-time professional speaker, a couple things you got to get clarity on a couple things. And for me, that's when we created a process that we call today, which is called the 5 M's. And so the 5 M's is getting clarity on your mission, your message, marketing, how to monetize, and how to manage your speaking business. And so when you're talking about systems, there's certainly systems across all of those. But, when we talk about mission, first and foremost, it's hey, what am I really going to be passionate about? What expertise am I bringing to the market? And what are people really looking for? And so we call that the speaker sweet spot. So I actually slowed down for a while to really think about and ask people and have conversations and test out content to see exactly what it was going to how it was going to resonate in the marketplace and what my position was going to be. And that's a changing spot, as the market, as industries continues to shift. And so, I spent a lot of time.
You brought up a really good point about slowing down and figuring out what exactly the market will pay for in addition to what your expertise is. And a lot of the speakers that I work with are under the impression initially, before going through the Speaker Ready Cash process and our systems and all of that, they're under the impression that if I tell a good story, I could, they're under the impression that I can speak. I've been on a stage before, I've spoken before, I could just do this. I can kind of wing it. But I like what you said about slowing down, figuring out we call it the target market fit, and figuring out how you can monetize that consistently and developing a signature story. That's critical because so many people know their story, but they don't know how it will impact the audience at each and every point of that story.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to do it. A lot of people want to leapfrog from mission all the way out to monetization. That's the number one question. How do I get more paid speaking engagements?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but how do you know? Nope, I just want more speaking engagements. Yeah, but if you take the time, do you have a product? No, more speaking. So that's same thing, But it's critical stuff, and it takes a lot of maturity and also a little bit of patience to do that, because it may not be instinctively what you think it is right out the gate. So,
no, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And so how do you, because a lot of speakers listening are also entrepreneurs. And one of the entrepreneurs that I love is Charisse of Sassy Jones Boutique. So I think that she's just fabulous, and she's built a community of raving fans. And I love that she's done that, and it keeps people coming back and always interested in her products and her services. So you all look her up because she has fly jewelry. But you've done something very similar in that you have a community that you fostered and that you've built. And a lot of our listeners are first and foremost entrepreneurs. That's how they make their money. They want that community. They want to build that community. They like seeing folks like us who have our own communities of people. I could launch a product and sell it out just from the Speaker Ready Cash group. And it basically happens every time. I could just post it to my community and then they're ready to go. And you have something similar. So how did you build that community, and how long did it take to go from zero, it's an idea in your head, Black Speakers Network, to now serving over 10,000 speakers and counting?
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned, we are at that 4 year mark. So I mean, I started with a Twitter account, a Facebook group, an email address, email list, and a dream. So every single day, we've been pushing this boulder up the hill, and then some days it's kind of like a flat spot, and then some days it's kind of like a 90-degree slope. Part of my brand now as a speaker and as a thought leader in the space is around that. So I have a PCS model, which is you know when I dissect the methodology that you're asking about in terms
Yep.
of building BSN, it really boils down to three things. So it's P as in partnerships, C for community, and S as in systems. But when we think about what's happening in the broader landscape of business, we are really in the age of we're already in the age of content, but we're not just in the age of content anymore. We're in the age of conversation,
Yep.
and we're in the age of community. I mean, every business, I mean, forget about speaking for a moment and just think about what's happening in the marketplace. I don't care if it's Starbucks. Like I went to Target the other day. They were like, are you a like double circle member? I'm like, what is that? Like, no, like, well, you can sign up right here. Like every single business that's going to be relevant in 21st century is building a community. You may call it different things,
Yep.
Amazon Prime, Netflix subscribe, but at the end of the day, like companies have figured out that the age of just putting something out there is over, and consumers from the same perspective, they want to feel an affinity toward the brand. They want to feel like they have a little bit of ownership over the process, that their voice is heard. And so smart entrepreneurs, I think in today's age, are building community. And I would love to say that we nailed the process from day one. It's still something I'm figuring out all the time. What I will say is that one of the things that I think are kind of unique to me as a person is that I'm just a very curious person. If people are buying, I want to know why. If people aren't buying, I want to know why. When people join, I ask why, and also ask where they came from. When people leave, I ask why, and are they coming back? Is the price too high? Is the price too low? What are you getting? What do you like? What do you don't like? Like, you have to continuously be asking questions of your customers, and not just asking questions, but actually doing something with the data that you're getting. And so I think, from a perspective of building community, that's the biggest place that we could start.
I love that. And you said so much there that's really valuable to anyone listening. So thank you for sharing your insights on that. And I appreciate what you said about not just asking the question, but then taking action. Because I do feel like sometimes we ask questions as busy entrepreneurs, but we don't have the systems in place or the team in place to then implement and to take action. And with any coach out there, they love students that take action. Like, I love when I can teach someone something and they actually do something with it and they tell me how it went. And so we all have to take action based on what Brian said. If you have a community and you're listening to this, or you have clients and you're listening to this, how are you fostering that community? What are you doing to take action on the feedback that they give you? And so in terms of your growth, because 4 years is not that long in terms of how fast, rapidly, and strong your community is, getting to 10,000 in 4 years is, I think, very fast. So how did it grow organically? Did you use paid marketing? What were some of the strategies behind that growth?
Yeah, well, one, I think going back to the mission, it was clear to me it was clear to me a few months in that there was a big appetite and a void in the marketplace for Black speakers. Like, there were unmet needs there. And so I think part of it is that. And also, and I feel like in 2020, it's kind of like the sexy thing to, put the word Black in something and kind of have that be a part of the organization. In 2016, not so much. I mean, it was fine, but I think being unapologetic about, like, because people would ask me, like, you sure you don't want to be like the global network, global speakers network? What about Latinos? Like, there's all these different voices, but I'm like, no, like, I know for a fact that we're underserved in this space, and I think we would benefit more from being unapologetic. And so some of you may have, at the end of the day, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And so you have to figure out what side you're going to play on and be okay and leaning in to the thing that makes you unique. For us, it was going to be that. And so did that mean that, we weren't going to get like certain sponsorship checks? Absolutely. But did it mean that we have an opportunity to galvanize an audience that instantly are even like before you even get on a website, like just hearing the name Black Speakers Network, it's kind of like, okay, if I'm a speaker, or I think I want to be a speaker and I'm Black, let me go check it out. Like it might be whatever, but I'm gonna check it out. And so I think being unapologetic about that part and very intentional about it is part of the growth. We didn't do a lot of paid ads. We actually are just starting to wade into that. Not that we didn't test specific ads heading out, but it just hadn't been part of my like overall strategy. I mean, we've leaned into things like content marketing. We actually just got a website that is robust enough to kind of match the vision and stuff like that. The initial website that we built, we had been pushing the limits of its capability for years, just until, we were able to, make the investment and had the vision to kind of do like the 2.0 version. But, we have a live speakers directory. We're rolling out Black Speakers University in a couple of weeks. We have, conferences and all types of components that we wanted to add to it. And so, some of those things helped us get to where we are. When I first started, Ashley, I was using like every social media automation tool in the planet. Like, if there was a way to get somebody from my DM to my email list, I was doing it. Of course, now most of them are shut down, but like, if there was an opportunity to be able to get people in, that was the thing. But my number one pillar, as you, hit on earlier, like the email list is at the absolute core. To me, that is the crown jewel. Like you cannot be a 21st century marketer really selling anything, without paying attention to your email list, something that you own and you have the ability to cultivate. And so, even if you join our Facebook community, or come to us through LinkedIn or Instagram, like we are laser focused on building, a active and valuable email subscriber list as well.
I like that. And so you were affirmatively reaching out to people, telling them about the network and what they could do, and you were just finding them. And were you just hitting the pavement, DMing people yourself, and using like DM automation tools? Is that how you were growing initially?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it was like content mark. So, we do like articles, posts, etc. Driving traffic back to the group. One thing I think is a little unique is that I recognize early on, and just from the nature of, if you're going to have an organization like Black Speakers Network, we're inherently building these different communities. And so when it came to doing things like webinars, like right now, everybody's, trying to sign up for Zoom and, hop in and all this stuff. Like we've had the highest level of Zoom for the last like 3.5 years. Like Zoom has made a lot of money off of me and BSN because we've been doing webinars. Like we've done a weekly webinar almost without fail for the last 3 years. And so when it came to providing content, providing value, that's what people wanted. And we just kept asking questions. And so we have a team too. The team has grown. It started with me, and then eventually we did bring on a virtual assistant. She's amazing, who handles a lot of our member onboarding, some social media marketing. She handles some of the broadcast email campaigns that we send out.
Where did you find her? Because it's not easy to find a good administrator.
It is not. I'm actually I'm looking for a senior a senior kind of administrative person, almost like a /COO person.
Yeah, but operations manager. I just hired one.
Yeah. But yeah, so it is not easy. It was a referral from somebody, one of our other members who have been using her and our network. So BSN, going back to your point, is BSN historically has grown very organically. There are some things we could have did to probably grow a lot faster that we chose not to, but there's been a lot of organic growth backed by content and relationship, but then also too by nature of our existence, it's a network and referral and relationships. And so all of our partners, we have like a platform partner program that provides services and resources. So photography, videography, web design, VAs, etc. Like it's been a very organic type of thing. And now we're just starting to get into, okay, how can we be more explicit about like external like outreach? We don't have a PR. Like, there's a lot of stuff we should be sending press release out that we don't, and stuff like that. So starting to refine some of that capability now. But it's been a lot of very organic reach. I think there was one point where we did leverage an agency specifically for like Instagram growth, and making sure that we were more, because we actually, to this day, we have like 21,000 followers on Instagram, but I think the community in Facebook is a truer representation of who we, of the folks that are truly like, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, great. And so if you had to give one tip to a speaker who's listening, who's like, I don't really know where to start. I want to know your thoughts on this specific question. Should speakers start with the speech, or should they start with the sale? Like, should they start with refining their speech, or should they start with figuring out how to land their first paid engagement?
They should start with a problem. Like, I think they need to start. We were in traffic, sales, and profit a couple of weeks ago. And, the number one thing I took away from that was like, is your business the vitamin or the painkiller? And so I do think that that's the place to start. It's the pain, I want to use the word pain instead of problem. Like, what is the pain that you're alleviating? And I'll take that thing one step further, because and that analogy is kind of like, pain reliever is like things like ibuprofen, Advil, like, but it's not getting rid of the pain. You're just masking the pain. Right. But, I was recovering from a back injury. And I was doing everything I could, taking ibuprofen and stuff like that. It wasn't working. So what did I end up doing? Going to a chiropractor, because the chiropractor is not just masking the pain, they're addressing the root cause. Like, what root cause are you, a pain reliever or a pain killer? Are you getting rid of the pain for somebody in their marriage and their relationships and their finances and their business and their career? Like, what is that thing? It's not about the product. You build a product and a service around that thing. The speaking just becomes a channel to do that. A course, a webinar, a pocket, like whatever it is, it just becomes a channel to actually solve that problem. But I think the problem, the mission, like that is the place where people should start.
Absolutely. And so where can our audience find you? Those in the Speak Your Way to Cash community who want to connect with Brian and learn more about him, where should they go?
Yeah. So the easiest is at blackspeakersnetwork.com. If you want to get really fancy with it, I invite everybody to join our free community at Black Speakers Network and Facebook. And so literally all you just do is type Black Speakers Network into Facebook and you'll find us. You'll actually, in terms of resources, we do give a free copy of our, we wrote a book last year called Speak Up, The Ultimate Guide to Dominate the Speaking Industry. Now, most people don't read ebooks, and I'm not recommending that you read. It's not Moby Dick. You don't read it from cover to cover. Like, there's 35 chapters around those 5 M's that I mentioned. So if you have questions like, how much do I charge for speaking engagements? How do I set up, a webinar? How do I, what's a speaker one sheet? What should be on it? Like, how do I optimize my speaker website? Like, you just go to the chapter that you need at that time, put it away, do it, and then go back to whatever chapter that you need. And so that's a free resource for folks that are thinking about starting their business or already starting and just trying to put the pieces together. And so that's at the Black Speakers Network Facebook group. If you leave your email, we can send it. If you don't leave your email, obviously can't do nothing for you. So that's what it is.
All righty. Well, if you guys heard from Brian first, not only about building community, which I think is super, super, super valuable. So go back, listen to this, take notes, but also like the tips that he gave about running your business, growing your business as a speaker are invaluable. So you guys know what it is. My name is Ashley Kirkwood with the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast. Upcoming, we have our Speak Your Way to Cash retreat. We were like 29 out of 30 seats sold for the retreat in October. We may add some seats, I don't know, but the pre-sale early bird rate is sold out. So You all know where to go, ashleynicolekirkwood.com/2020retreat. You can always meet me in the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group, and you will join me again next week for another awesome episode featuring a rock star speaker. Don't we feature good people, guys? Okay. Give us a like, comment, do whatever you need to do, and then rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts so we can keep bringing you the best in the business. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.